Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy 2025. And what an interesting year I think this is going to be. We're going to be talking about that tonight. Plus, we're going to meet not just one, but two micro grant winners from this fall, the November and December Space Micro Grant winners that the center awarded just over the holiday season. And believe me, you are going to want to meet these guys, whether you know it or not. From the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, my name is Thomas Andrew Olson, and this is The Unknown Quantity. Okay, well, as you know, this show is hosted and sponsored by the Center for Space Commerce and Finance. And what is the center? What do we do? Well, we do a lot of things. We're a 501c3 nonprofit based. Actually, we're based in Texas, but my home office is here in Florida. But what do? We champion and we strengthen emerging space startups, space scalable SMBs, space adjacent enterprises worldwide through advisory, access, and advocacy across the funding spectrum. Our programs fortify business plans and investor readiness for founding teams at varying levels of development. We've been doing this for a very long time. Our major projects right now are, of course, the Space Investment Summit, which we've been doing since 2007, the New Space Business Plan Competition, and an Entrepreneurial Boot Camp, which we've been doing since 2009. And of course, now since last August, we've initiated our Space Micro Grant program, where we award $1,000 to a very promising looking startup, and they apply on our website, and it's just a very simple process. And so you can, and if you want to apply for a micro grant or donate to maintain micro grants, it's all on the same page. And that page is, of course, spacemicrofund.com. You can go there. Thank you, Leah, for putting that up there. And it's, well, okay, spacemicrofund.com. We need that link up there for them as well. And that's where you can go to apply for a micro grant. January is still wide open. So go ahead and do that, please. And I always love to hear from people. And we've been hearing from some great companies. And I wish I could give micro grants to all of them. And, but our budget is one a month. So, may the best win, and we keep a lot of people around. If you applied a few months ago and you think you have a better shot, please apply again. No problem with that. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, now joining me now is one of my favorite podcast producers, entrepreneur, and one of my oldest space friends, and quite probably one of the best looking men in his generational cohort, Michael Lane. Michael, it's great to see you, and welcome to 2025, man. What's going on? And he can't stop laughing, and I can't hear him. This is great.
Oops.
There you are.
There you go.
Okay.
I was laughing. You caught me off guard with the most, what'd you say? The most attractive man. That was
the best looking man in his generational cohort. So, I limited it to an age group, in the space advocacy community.
Right on. It's the hair. I'm sure it's the hair.
It's the hair. Yeah. I get that. Yeah, I know. This is popular too. I got the tail going, I look like a badass, with these guys on the stage.
It was a great holiday. Thanks for, bringing me on. I think it's going to be a terrific year. I'm actually super excited. I can honestly say 2023 was rough. 2024 was kind of rebuilding a foundation. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited for the new year. I'm excited for this new year. I think 2025 is going to be a game changer. We're going back to the moon. I think there's going to be some big announcements in the next week or two that really have a lot of ripple effects in the space sector. As you know, I refer to it as ACDC, academic, civil, defense, and commercial. and
Okay.
the entire industry is going to, I think, be supercharged in the coming years. So fingers crossed. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of new things in the pipeline that we could spend the whole hour discussing them. But um, I know you've been looking at this. I've been traveling for 2 weeks,
Mhm.
trying, pumping up the center, and so in various places and getting some sponsorships for this year's programs. And we have a bunch of them coming up.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking about that maybe tonight, and certainly in future shows. We'll have some big announcements to make ourselves. So, what couple of things have you seen that really stand out last few days since the new year started?
Well, let's talk about the show for a second. So we're definitely going to be making some upgrades to the show. As I said, in November, December, we're really going to start focusing on funders and founders. So that's going to be a big change for us. We gave ourselves a little bit of latitude when we first started the show to kind of be a little bit all over the map. And now, after starting to find our feet, the focus on every other week, it's going to be, we're really going to highlight our entrepreneurial side, our entrepreneurial roots in the sector. We'll talk to our microgrant recipients, and we'll also talk to somebody who has pulled in a fairly large check in the industry, asking them how did they do it, what are they trying to do. And then the other show of the month, we do 2 shows a month on Tuesdays, is really going to be focusing on the people who write the checks, whether those are government contracts that are doing focused on a deliverable, or whether it's the angel VC investment private equity community. That's how we're going to divide the show. So that's, I think, going to be a pretty big deal. We've identified a bunch of themes that we want to focus on. So that's going to be interesting. I'm not going to share those just yet, but I like where the show is going. I like the future of the show.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be good.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And in between that, there will be, once in a great while, there'll be themes surrounding politics and policy.
Mhm.
We were already reaching out to some people in the political realm, and if they say yes, we're going to have a couple of interesting shows around that in the coming months.
Well, I want to point out that our second guest was Dr. Greg Autry, who's on the Trump transition team right now. So we have already had some pretty epic guests. As they say in Boston, they're wicked smart. And I think we've got some interesting stuff coming up. So yeah, that's great. I love that.
Yeah, we tried to reach out to catch up with Greg Autry just like the other day, and he wrote back a very cryptic message saying, "I really can't. I'm working on a secret project." I have no idea what that means, but I guess we'll find out sooner or later.
Right.
Great.
My hope is sooner, right? My hope is sooner.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So there's some interesting stuff happening in the space world. Often I'll dig into reports and things like that, and I do have a little bit to share there. This just came out 2 days ago. No, it came out yesterday. This is a report from Bryce. You've heard me talk about Bryce before. Bryce Tech does analysis and consulting in the space sector, and so they generate these reports each quarter. I'm a little surprised this was quarter 3. Maybe I missed something, but this just came out the other day, so I'm betting it's not a typo. But I was a little surprised because I thought that this would have been their year-end document. No surprise, everybody knows that SpaceX is leading the world with launches. I don't think that everybody knows that China is not as far behind as they sometimes think, right? So if you add these 10 plus this one, plus this one, plus this one, it adds up better, right? It adds up better for China.
Well, let me Just sorry
Yeah,
for
yeah, of course.
interjecting,
Yeah.
but if you're just comparing, government to government stuff, then maybe China doesn't seem so far behind. But you
Right.
got to realize in total, because I already have these numbers,
Mhm.
for the entire year 2024, there were 140 launches. 132 of them were from SpaceX.
Yeah. Yeah.
That includes everything they did, including, all the Starship tests.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
And then we have one failure.
This is just talking about the quarter, so you can multiply
Yeah.
that out.
Sure.
But there's a legitimate conversation about, is there a Cold War? That conversation's happening at Capitol Hill. That conversation's happening at the Pentagon. I'm pretty sure it's happening, in the capitals of Beijing and, in fact, Moscow. And I think these numbers speak to that. I mean, I'm not sure how that's going to ultimately land. The thing that really surprised me, though, when I looked at this, was Europe only had 2, and I don't know why, but I feel like they were getting a lot of press. Maybe it was for some of the satellites that were
one of
launching
them,
on American
one of them was
systems.
an Ariane 6.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that meant something, I guess.
but only 2 launches. That seemed. I mean, I'm not trying to throw Bryce under a bus because I have a lot of confidence in them, but I almost feel like I want that to be a typo. So that was a little.
I got that same number. I got that same number from another source.
Yeah, no, I know it's the right number. It's just in my imagination and maybe in my heart, I just thought Europe was stronger than they are. So that was a surprise to me.
Or at least better organized. I don't know what's going on. How they get to only 2 launches in a year. That's really very unusual.
There's supposed to be as many as 20 new launch vehicles. Now, I think that number is a little hyped, so maybe it's only 15. But there's supposed to be a lot of new launch vehicles hitting the market, and I mean the market on purpose. The market. In 2025. That could be a game changer. I'm really curious to see how many of those happen. And many of them are in Europe. The UK is especially trying to build out spaceports. They see that the spaceport logjam in America is starting to really have an impact. And the UK wants to be ahead of the curve on spaceports. So I think that's really interesting.
All right.
The other thing that I thought was a little interesting is look down here at the very bottom here. Islamic Revolutionary Guard. Iran is starting to launch things on par with ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, right? No one would put those 2 people on the same chart normally, right? So I thought that was a little startling. In the same way that I thought that Europe was stronger in launch, I also think ISRO is stronger in launch. And so I'm curious to see what the year-end report looks like for Bryce. So I'm hoping that comes out very soon.
Okay.
And the last thing to point out is everybody knows SpaceX is the big beast in this field. I added these numbers up. All of these other numbers. SpaceX is 7 times the world's cargo capacity.
Yeah.
Right? Add all of these up together, divide into that number. It's almost 7. It's incredible how much bigger that is. So those were just some of the takeaways I thought were pretty interesting. I'm going to turn it back over to you. I have some other stuff if we want to get into it.
Well, we got a couple of minutes. Do you want to do that VC thing you want to talk about?
Oh yeah,
we can do that real quick, and then we'll meet our guests.
Swing over. Okay, great. Let me stop sharing this and bring up something else. So we talked a little bit about a guest that we had on the show right as we first started, Dr. Greg Autry. And then our next guest was Megan, and why do I not see this? Sorry, here we go. Sorry, I couldn't find my link. I think Megan and Michael Mealing at Starbridge, and Megan Crawford from Space Fund. They were our second guests. They were the second guests on our show. Maybe they were our first. I'm not sure.
They were our first, actually.
Okay. All right. So I got this email this morning, just 8 hours ago. It's pretty fascinating. So I'm going to post this link here in a moment. There we go. So first of all, fantastic graphic. Like,
yeah,
that's going to be my new screen background. So let's first talk for a moment about Space Fund. So they have been around for about 7 years. I think that's right. I think they're on their third fund, might only be their second, but it's in that range. If I were to guess, they probably have about 40 million under management. Maybe it's 25, maybe it's 50. I don't think it's more than 50. And they have, I'm going to make a guess, 20 investments, 20 portfolio companies. I might be wrong on that. I didn't actually look that up. That's just going off of my gut and what I've known about them over the last few years. So Megan has been involved with the space sector for more than 10, 12, probably not 15. But she's been around. And so she was a guest on our show just recently. And she always writes really interesting articles. And this one really kind of caught my eye. It's the tyranny of the VC equation. I'm going to put the link in the chat so you all have it. And this one kind of struck home to me because not every space company is VC-able. I have certainly felt that many times in my careers, that we do not fit, not every company in the sector fits the VC model. And so we dig into this, and so she's looking at the original rocket equation, that's the Tsiolkovsky equation, and saying, look, this stuff is really hard, and yes, if you want to go to space, you need to have fuel. And the hard part is the farther you want to go, the more fuel you have, which means the rocket equation is really tough. It's hard to beat against that. And then she's like, well, if that's one issue that we have to deal with, the industry is a different kind of problem. Let's move away from the engineering for a moment and really look at what it takes to go to space financially. And the first requirement of a venture capitalist is ensuring that their partners, their limited partners that fund them, get their money back. And the idea is called the return of the fund. And if the fund is, $100 million fund, the venture capitalist, with every investment they make, they have to assess whether or not your company is capable of hitting that $100 million amount. Let that sink in. They might have 20 companies in their portfolio, but most of them are going to fail. So they have, the way that they bet, the way that they invest, is that one of those companies must return the fund. If they have two, well, that's great. Then they double their money. If they have three, that's great. They triple their money. But the psychology of the investor, the venture capital investor, is that one of those 20 companies must be able to return the fund. So they're making 20 bets, assuming only one of them will succeed. So every bet they make has to make that whole fund.
It's tough for them. I get, but it's a different market. It's a different economy. In the end of the 90s, the same VCs that were funding the internet boom, they used what was then called a 262 model. They invest in 10 companies, and on average, 2 of them would go broke, 6 of them would become walking wounded, and then 2 would go gangbusters, and maybe give them 20x returns each, and that was enough to get their fund back, make them some money, and take another 10 bets. Obviously, the world has changed.
And it's especially hard because they are if this is their target, then when they start working out how to value the company, they are expecting that if they only have a 20%, if they only have a 20% equity in that startup, and that 20% has to generate $100 million in value, that means the startup has to have a $500 million valuation.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, there's a multiple of how much revenue do they have to justify that that $500 million valuation. I mean, it gets bonkers really fast. And the truth is, the sad truth is, it's a lot easier to do that if you are a digital company and your only expenses are shoving pizza under the door of the coders in the dorm room instead of buying fuel, bending metal, building pressure vessels, and the hardware necessary to build.
And we were, graybeards like us were actually talking about that a lot and making those comparisons back in the old days of the Space Cynic blog that we did back in the aughts. Me and Shubber Lee and David Livingston and John Juris, we did that stuff. We talked about that forever and didn't make a lot of friends, but we told the truth, and the truth is finally sunk in after all these years. So I'm feeling kind of vindicated. Michael, this is a topic we should probably do a whole show on.
Sure.
And maybe we'll get Megan back to talk about it. But I've got a bunch of guests.
Let's bring them on.
We need to start meeting right now.
All right.
And our first guest tonight is our November microgrant winning company called Orbit Arch. I want to invite him on right now, the founder and CEO, Naman Chawla, and the Chief Technology Officer, Krishna Nagpal. Welcome, gentlemen. And we want to give you a chance to talk up your company. Hi. Orbit Arch it interested me because they're using AI and LiDAR to power a solution that's supposed to enhance satellite safety by providing real-time collision avoidance, debris detection, and advanced space management. And with us tonight, again, are Naman and Krishna. Welcome, gentlemen. So talk to us about your company. Where'd you come up with this idea? And what are you doing to promote it now? And where are you going with it?
Good morning. So I'll start. So basically how we came across this idea was, there was like a random competition coming up. I have been working in the space sector. I've been working with my university with the space projects. So I have been working in the space sector along with my university, and one random competition came up. I called Krishna, like, okay, we are going to this competition. We were not fully aware what the idea was going to be at that point of time. Then we started looking up. It was organized by Indian Space Research Organization. So we looked up. So one major issue which was commonly faced in space, but was never addressed properly, was the issue of sustainability. And once we connect sustainability, we find the issue of debris. So that's how we came out with an issue, what the actual issue the market was facing. And if we see the recent news only, there has been a 500 kgs debris falling out of a village in Kenya. Yesterday, a flight from South Africa got postponed because SpaceX rocket debris started falling from space. So if common people are getting affected by this debris problem, so this is a problem which needs to be addressed. So that's how we came out with an idea, and we plan to incorporate LiDAR sensors along with artificial intelligence to give live tracking of the satellites, live tracking of the debris. And if a debris has to be collided with the satellite, it can be prevented well before. So that's what we do basically. We are saving up the cost up to like millions because each maneuver costs up to almost 50 to 60,000 US dollars per year per annum per satellite. It's like $300,000, and then there's a radar sensor cost, there's human power cost. All these extra costs are coming up. So we're trying to save those costs in short. And right now we are done with the MVP model. We are done with the three AI models of like for detection, prediction, and decision model. And now we are moving towards the hardware side. Once we have the LiDAR, we will start incorporating LiDAR, and then our product will be ready to go in the market maybe in next 6 to 7 months. And for the remaining part, Krishna will take over for tech part.
Okay, hi everyone. So I am Krishna. I am the CDO of Orbita. So here in our startup, what we focus upon is that, as Naman told, that we have space debris in space. So we are protecting the satellites from getting collided into those space debris. How are we doing that? We are incorporating LiDAR and AI technologies. Now, in those AI technologies, as Naman told, we'll be having three AI models. The first one is detection. That detects that how many debris, that what type of debris is there in the path of the satellite, and based on that, we detect the debris. Okay, there is a debris. The next stage is prediction of that debris trajectory, so that the satellite is safe enough to move into or across that trajectory of the debris. So let's say there is a debris coming here and the satellite is moving. So to prevent the collision, we predict the trajectory of the satellite, trajectory of the debris. The third model is, the first one was detection, second is prediction, and the third one is decision. That how the satellite would turn its thrusters on. It's like this. Okay, so there in satellite there is a turning movement and there is a full orbital change movement. So whether it's a full, we have to change the full orbit to save the satellite from getting collided, or we just have to turn the satellite a bit to save the debris from the satellite. So this is what we are focusing on using the AI technologies.
Okay, so now something you just gave me a lot. My head's exploding now. So, well, I'm still not sure about one thing. Maybe I missed it. That'd be silly me. I'm aging out rapidly. The thing is, guys, so is this something that you're doing from the ground and beaming up to the satellite, or is it a piece of hardware that you're bolting onto the satellite, or installing in a new satellite when it's being built? How is this
All right.
delivered? This
So
service?
basically, yeah, so basically what we were trying to do is for all the new upcoming satellites, without hampering with the space, power, or fuel consumption of the satellite or size of the satellite, we are planning to put LiDARs, small hardwares on the satellite. The
Okay.
number of LiDARs will vary as per the size of the satellite. For example, if you're taking a 24U CubeSat, the number of LiDARs will be 6. If you're taking a 60 CubeSat, the number of LiDARs might decrease because at the end of the day, only we have to do is make a 360-degree view projection around the satellite so that we know from where the debris is coming from. So that is the only hardware we're gonna put, and for the rest, it's gonna be inside the satellite's brain itself, like in the satellite circuit. The artificial intelligence will be working inside the satellite. So yeah, it will be hosted on a satellite's payload, satellite owner's payload. So we are not launching our own satellites, but we are using the satellites to save the satellites. So you're putting a technology to save the satellites.
Okay. And so right now your business model is installing something on new satellites before they're launched. Do you have any plans? Is there a way you could even do it, upgrading existing satellites in place and like bolting on a solution to an existing satellite? Is that even possible, or is that just too soon to ask?
So for existing satellites, one thing can be done. So far, we cannot put new hardware on existing satellites because they're already out there in space. But one thing is that the data sets, maps of the debris, where exactly debris is coming from, that information can be provided to old satellites so that even the old satellites cannot maneuver on their own, but they have the live location from where debris is coming from a nearby new satellite. There will be a whole network of satellites. New satellites will be tracking the debris constantly, and then old satellites, existing satellites will be getting aware of where debris is coming from, and the maneuver can be planned accordingly.
Okay. And so the customers you have in mind now, your potential customers, these are all because I'm thinking you're building in a piece of technology to a new satellite. How small can you go? Because there's satellites range in size quite a lot. There's still the big birds that the big boys fly that are 1,000 pounds and they're 20 feet tall. And then you've got these micro CubeSats and slightly larger ones where the constellation guys are launching those. I mean, how small can you go for this thing to be able to work and be effective and useful for a customer?
So the smallest we can go is for a 1U CubeSat, which is like the smallest CubeSat existing for constellations purposes. So for 1U CubeSat, we can work along with just putting 1 or 2 LiDARs, providing a 360-degree view along the satellite. So actually, our major customers would be constellation networks because that's the point where there are high risk of collisions because lots of satellites are being launched together at the same point of time. And if every organization is planning to launch their constellation, sooner or later the orbit will be clustered with the constellation of satellites. There are high chances of collision. So we are targeting the constellation market primarily because like the number of satellites is more, size is small. And yeah, it will be available starting from like 1U CubeSat going till the largest geostationary satellite.
Okay. Where are you in your business development process right now? What's the current milestone you're looking to achieve?
So the current milestone which we are looking to achieve is basically inclusion of hardware along with the software. We have a software ready, we have a hardware existing. Now the main point comes is a proper mashup. Hardware should work according with the software. Software should be getting data from the hardware and should act accordingly. So that is a milestone which we are
Okay.
trying to achieve. We have total 3 people in the team, Krishna, me, and we have one more co-founder with us, Sachi. And we are also taking guidance from a couple of mentors in the university. So they are guiding us side by side throughout our timeline.
Michael, you're sitting there looking very concerned. Do you have a question?
Not concerned, but like you, I'm just kind of thinking through this. You're going to have to do on the ground data processing, right? There's no way that the individual boxes that you bolt on to other people's satellites can do that. So I think I'm curious how you're going to do communications back down to the ground, and processing that data is going to be it's going to be tricky today, and 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when we have 40,000 satellites, it's going to be very tricky. So I actually don't question the technology at all, but the algorithms and the data management, I think, are going to be tricky. Thoughts on that?
Okay, so just clarifying certain things, we are not doing the data processing on the ground itself. All the automatic decisions, all the AI model, all the software will go up the satellite itself. So basically, in short, we are removing the ground stations from the picture of existence for debris tracking because, as you know, that there are certain blind spots existing. Uh, like if we are talking about a satellite launched by Indian Space Organization, if it goes behind India on the other side of the Earth, it is a blind spot. So ground station cannot work, data processing cannot happen. So that is what we're trying to do. We will be putting the AI model inside the satellite's brain itself, like the satellite's microcontroller. Everything will be done on board the satellite. There will be no requirement of ground station, whether it is decision, prediction, or anything. It can be going up the satellite. Satellite will be deciding on its own. And for more of a tech part, Krishna will answer that.
Okay, so adding on to Naman's point, what actually we are doing is the data pre-processing is already being done in our own servers. And the question which you asked there is where the major role of Orbita comes in, that how do we handle all of this data into our servers? So this is one of our USPs which we are going to handle.
Sorry, I actually missed part of that. Could you say that again?
Which part?
Uh, I was trying to understand the data components, and then I mostly missed what you just said. I just need you to repeat that, please.
Okay. So I was telling that mainly the pre-processing of the data is being done onto our servers, and so the question you asked is our USP itself, the data pre-processing and everything, which is where we come in and we protect the satellites from getting collided.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Everybody knows that debris is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. Collisions are starting to happen. There's real conversations about the Kessler effect and Kessler syndrome. How far are you from deploying a prototype? Where are you looking at a year, a 2-year, 3-year development? What are you looking at?
So we are looking at almost maybe 8 to 9 months development before launching an official working prototype.
Okay.
Now, the major part is getting hardware and then the integration. So this is the core part because now the software needs tuning as per the hardware. Hardware already exists, but we can play around with the software. So AI models need tuning as per the data we receive from the hardware because tracking a debris includes various variables, eccentricity, inclination, semi-major axis, all those points. So that is what we are working on currently. Now it is going to take up to almost 8 to 9 months to have a proper working model ready along with the LiDAR and the AI, and then we'll be launching up the prototypes.
Very good. Very good. We got to move over to our next guest, but really, we always end the. Oh, you have more? You're muted, sir. Tom, you are muted. No, Tom, you are muted. I don't know why.
Okay, let me try again.
There we go.
Okay. Are you capable of updating the onboard models as new data is added to the network?
Okay, so when we're talking about the new data, when new data sets are coming up, yes, we are capable of updating the models because that's where the ground station will come into picture.
Okay.
So
All right.
when
What kind of
yeah.
internal power do you run on?
So we'll be running on the satellite's internal power only, but just to make sure that we do not exceed the owner's requirement of the internal power. In that case, let's say a maneuver is supposed to happen. In that case, what will be happening, we'll be turning off all the non-critical functions of the satellite, and then post that if the power will be transferred for the working of the AI model. So let's say if the satellite's function is to click images over the Earth while rotating. So when a debris is coming towards, LiDAR detects that yes, a debris is coming, the power will be rerouted. It will be turned off from the camera momentarily. It will be rerouted towards the AI model. AI model will function. Escape maneuver will be performed. And once the satellite is back in its orbit, successfully escape the debris, the power will go back to the camera. This way, we are not hampering with any external power source or the power source which the satellite owner has provided us. And we are not also exiting the buffer zone of the satellite so that no other external equipments of the satellite are being harmed in this way.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. Orbit Arch. What, Michael?
What are you going to do with the money?
Oh, yeah. I should ask him that. That's true.
You guys were the November winner of the micro grant. So what are you doing with our money? No strings attached. You can do anything you want, but we're always curious.
So with the money, we are planning to put up the company, like build up the company of Workingly, and we'll be expanding our team sooner or later. So we'll be needing more tech people with us working along with the AI integration. So that's where we are planning to put the money.
Okay. Naman Chawla, Krishna Nagpal, thank you for coming. Orbit Arch just sounds like an amazing idea. And it's an idea whose time has definitely come. Collision avoidance on the fly with satellites. I love it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here, and best of
Thank
luck
you.
to you guys.
Thank you,
Thank
sir,
you.
for having us.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, folks. Next up is our December micro grant winner. And I'm going to introduce now our gentlemen from Space Wave, Mark Moffat and David Chesney. They're the chief scientist and controls engineer specifically, and they're an innovative plasma physics research and development company, and they're pursuing nuclear electric propulsion. Now, this has been done before or tried before, and it does work. And I guess there's a version of it that works in some way. It's pretty slow. You guys want to make something that's so good that a trip to Mars is only 40-day transit time. So definitely, we want to hear a lot more about this. What do you do? How do you do it? Why do you do it? What gets you up in the morning? What's the outcome going to be, and when? No pressure.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Thomas and Michael, thanks for having us
Absolutely.
on. And we really appreciate the micro grant. It's going to help us a lot, as we'll mention here later. But so nuclear electric propulsion, specifically electric propulsion, you have to have a rocket that actually interfaces with a nuclear reactor in order to produce enough thrust to get to a faraway destination. And up to now, a lot of them have failed. We haven't sent anyone to Mars. That's still an open problem. And the way we approach it is to mimic solar flares. So when I was a graduate student back in the early 2010s, and I graduated in 2013, but 11, I was actually studying solar physics, and specifically how the corona produces the solar wind. And coronal mass ejections are very well known that produce the aurora, but I was looking at very small scale eruptions on the solar surface. And less of those solar flare production was very similar at that stage. And so we even saw small scale coronal mass ejections. And that process is called magnetic reconnection. And so we're very familiar that the Earth, we hold onto our atmosphere because of the Earth's gravitational field. But at the visible surface of the sun, the gravitational field is 30 times stronger than what we're feeling right now. Yet the solar atmosphere is being expelled away at extremely high speeds. And from that article that you mentioned about the rocket equation, the exhaust velocity of any rocket is extremely important and contributes to thrust. And it turns out that the solar wind propagates 10 to 100 times faster than any existing rocket, even the ones that are being pursued by NASA now. And utilize that reconnection process and control it, then you could produce a very, very powerful electric rocket. And that's what we are pursuing. We're pursuing a magnetic reconnection rocket to really control that process. And in the past, reconnection has been very well known in like tokamaks and fusion reactors, because reconnection causes havoc, meaning you're trying to confine this plasma and it gets expelled because of reconnection, because it does not want to be confined. But our approach is to geometrically and magnetically confine those particles enough to generate a singular direction outflow. And so when I came up with this in about 2011, started pursuing it really in 2012. I was still in graduate school, and for the years after that, did a lot of theoretical development. But I always knew from the physics field that if you can simulate until you're blue in the face, but nobody cares unless you build it, and it actually works. Because physicists are a quirky bunch where you can simulate it and it can look great, but only half of the people are actually going to believe you. So I took the approach of Field of Dreams, and if you build it, they will come. So in 2019, Mark can confirm, my girlfriend at the time and Mark's now wife, they knew each other and said, hey, boyfriend, along, and so he and I met at a brewery, and I'd introduced him to this, or I told him what I was working on. I had just started some small scale experiments with magnetics, and Mark was working with a huge vacuum chamber at the time. So ever since then, we've been really, really, really deep into tech development, and Mark really controls a lot of that. Well, no pun intended, but all the control systems and all the individual subcomponents. And so since then, we've been working very closely together to get these prototypes up. If you want to say any more, Mark, there you go.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I met Dave in 2019. I was just starting out my PhD, trying to get my dissertation going for my project, and I was in charge of a very large vacuum chamber. And Dave was like, "Well, I have an idea of what we can do in that chamber." And so while I was doing my dissertation work, we also started prototyping his magnetic reconnection idea. And so we just hit the ground running, trying to put all his theoretical work and work that into how can we turn the theory into actual energy levels related to electric propulsion for pulse power. How do you switch pulse power? How do you handle these dangerous levels of voltage that are, 3,000 volts that we're handling and 5,000 amps? So we were able to develop out all those systems and get these functional prototypes running. And so that's where we are now. And we've been able to start rebuilding it up. I mean, we can get into how we were developing out the tech, but we've gotten some indications of the phenomena already in the lab space, and we've been able to build out certain technologies that enable repeatability, because you can get a semi-miraculous event, but in order to get you need a repeatable system in order to pulse a lot, and that's what we would have to do to become an engine. So you need a high reliability, high repeatability of this new phenomenon that we're trying to prove.
That is fascinating, and if you're right, it revolutionizes space. Give me an idea about specific impulse. I mean, how does it compare to what we're used to, right? You're talking about, Mars in 40 days versus 9 months. I can't really get a handle on just how much power that is.
Yeah, so in terms of specific impulse, any chemical rocket, like launch vehicles and even Apollo and Space Shuttle, you're talking about a specific impulse about 500 seconds, where something like the Vasmer engine using radio frequency heating gets up to about 5,000. And the solar wind specifically, if you just use those values, you're talking tens of thousands, about 25,000.
That's
seconds.
what I was missing. That's what I was missing, because when you were giving your preamble, my only experience with solar electric propulsion engines are very, very low power for a long time, right? They're designed to be, kind of positioning boosters, not the main event. Right. And so you're taking something that I didn't even know was possible and turning it into the main event engine, the real engine behind it, not a. Wow, that's fascinating. I'm kind of excited about that. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, when you're talking about power, so other engines like Vasmer and others, you have to dissipate high power very quickly. It's not low power. Low power satellites can be, for satellite repositioning, it's just fine. That can work with solar panels. But for actual propulsion, where you're talking about sending humans or large cargo to Mars in 40 days, you have to be able to dissipate. Radio frequency has been shown not to be able to do that. Hull thrusters are very bad at that. They break down very quickly. The solar system in the universe, magnetic reconnection is a natural high power dissipation process that occurs very rapidly. So if you can control that and pulse it very rapidly, that leads to high power electric propulsion. And that's the reason you need a nuclear reactor. So, that high input power, you have to change your momentum somehow, somewhere. and a nuclear reactor is just perfect for that.
So that answers a little bit of the question from the audience. How much fuel and what's the fuel type?
Ideally, like right now, we actually just this past Friday we tested with argon with thruster fuel, but eventually I know NASA wants xenon, and that could essentially, with reconnection that scales with any of the of those fuels. But xenon is definitely the answer long term.
Okay.
So since you're building a field of dreams here, how are you getting them to come? What's your funding model for this? Is there, I don't know what kind of a business model you do for this. It sounds like you're just trying to build a new exotic form of propulsion that you hope to, NASA will pay you to build it for them. And maybe some other spacefaring nations as well. What's the roadmap for this? And how are you getting funding? Are you getting SBIR? Are you getting NASA, other NASA grants, or you're raising funds in different ways? How are you doing?
Yeah, so right now we have a small grant with the Department of Energy, and that's a collaborative grant with the University of Alabama at Huntsville, but it's not enough to really get off the ground and be fully independent. And so Mark and I struggle with this a lot in terms of we are the scientists and the engineers doing the work. We have no business background, and the business stuff we're learning on the fly essentially.
Yeah.
And so we've submitted SBIRs, and the thing that always comes back is that our business model and market research is not fully there yet.
Yeah.
Which is fine because we're happy that we don't have tech debt, meaning our tech is ahead of our business model.
Yep.
And so
I get it.
The goal is to show the phenomenon working and we have control of it, and then scale up from there, which mainly, as everyone knows, takes money. So
okay, I do have a couple of quick questions on the tech from one of our viewers this evening. He was asking about what are the composition of the fuels you intend to use for the larger model, and then he has a question about reaction cost. I'm not sure what that means, but I thought I'd throw it out there.
Yeah, so in terms of fuel, definitely argon, xenon. Xenon being the NASA choice for fuel for nuclear electric propulsion. Reaction cost, I'm not totally sure what that means either. In terms of maybe, I don't know if he's talking about thrust, but for any typical, we're basically the same as any typical nuclear, where you're talking about 5 to 10 newtons of thrust. So a small thrust over long periods of time, but high enough specific impulse that you're efficient, power efficient.
Right, because it's not like a chemical rocket where you run out of fuel. You've got all this stuff in here. You're burning it slowly, and it takes, it's that you're running at a specific impulse, but you get to go on and on and on, and so that acceleration just continues and continues and continues. And
exactly.
So,
and one of the pathways that we're pursuing right now is to get in line on a reactor at a national lab, because reactors aren't just everywhere for someone to walk in and say, hey, I'd like to hook up to your power load, or as your power load. So we're now interfacing with Idaho National Lab and had been talking to Oak Ridge National Lab, but any new space qualified nuclear reactor that's in development, they have a timeline of 2 to 2.5 years or so, and so we can work in parallel with that and get a prototype ready enough to get in the door one day and hook it up and do a test and show that we can dissipate that high power for long periods of time.
I would like to see y'all bolt yourself to the outside of a Starship, so the Starship does the hard work of getting up to Leo, right? And then you guys take it from there. Yes. Just bolt yourself to the outside.
Exactly.
And then he's faded away, but I get where he's going with it. You would then you get up to Leo, then you fire it up from there and go to wherever you want to go. Do you have a time, any kind of, even in your dreams, a timeline for actually getting that first orbital test accomplished?
Mark just
I would
kind of
say
like his eyes.
in 5 years.
Mark doesn't need to talk. His expressions are classic. You know, yeah.
3 to 5 years, I
Yeah.
would say. would
Is
be
there
ideal.
a price tag for that? 3 to 5 years, and how much money?
So I guess it depends on what the application. If it's
Okay.
what we want it to
Mars.
be, it's going to
We're
be
going to
a
Mars.
large.
Well, application.
a large
Well, the
price
first
tag.
application is proof of concept.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So it doesn't
something
matter
like
where it
portable
goes.
maneuvering, Yeah.
As long as you can get it
Yeah.
back.
Oh, but we
Last. Go ahead.
actually, well, sorry, I just wanted to mention about the micro grant and how it's really going to help
Yes.
us with so in the solar atmosphere, the reconnection process occurs where these strong magnetic fields occur. You know, solar coronal mass ejections. Everyone has seen sunspots and heard of sunspots. Those are extremely strong magnetic fields, and our pulse power system relies on high voltage capacitors to create those strong fields, and we need one large capacitor more to be able to get to the levels we need. And so that's what we're going to use the funds for, directly for that.
All righty.
We don't usually get our grant applied to hardware. Usually it's marketing or business formation or throw a party or whatever. So hardware, that's where I live. So that's always nice to see. Good for you.
This is the
Yeah, we're very excited about it. So
field
thank
of
you very
dreams
much.
of we got to build it.
Yeah.
Build it.
All right. We're running out of time. So Dave Chesney, Chief Scientist, Mark Moffett, Controls Engineer, Space Wave. This sounds amazing, and I hope you guys succeed, and we'll be watching very closely.
Excellent.
Thank you for being on. Congratulations on your micro grant, which we're going to
Thank
get
you
to you
very much.
hopefully tomorrow.
Thanks for having us.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye, all.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks.
Okay, we're at the end of our first program of 2025. And like you, Michael, I think it is going to be a really great year coming up. And especially we're going to have a new NASA administrator who's a very interesting guy. He's been a great administrator of his own private companies. But that's a very different thing from being an administrator of a big publicly funded tax-fed government agency. And we'll see how he makes that transition. But the potential is there to do all sorts of very, very interesting stuff and send us all off into new directions and new dimensions. And we'll see where that takes us. As always, it's great to see you, Michael, and it's great to do this first show of the year. And I think we've got a good one coming up in a couple of weeks. We talked about our guests. We'll be announcing that shortly in the next few days. And so our next show will be at same bat time, same bat channel on 2 weeks from today on the 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So from the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, this is Thomas Andrew Olson. Keep watching the skies.